this is a presentation that we have done before on seed treatment. There are a few new things in here, primarily being that Jake will cover on the 601 there a little bit. Technical information is available online also. So if there's further information you do need or would like to have on this, just reach out to myself or Jake or Shelby on here, or reach out to your LSA, LAM, LAS, anybody. In the marketing department too, anybody here within Legend, and we can get you more information on the seed treatment products here and any of the technical information if you need that. So again, we're going to talk about seed treatment here. Jake too, just blurt out if there's something you want to add in or something you've seen in some of the trials that you've done. Again, our goal within Legend here to deliver high yield, resilient crops through advanced seed technology. And that's anything we do with the seed treatment, right, is just to enhance the product that we have, right, whether corn, soybeans, or any of the other crops that we have, right, alfalfa, sorghum, sunflowers, come already done, but we work with our suppliers. So if there's anything that we can do to further enhance them and protect our investment in the seed, or the farmer's investment in the seed, that's what we want to do. So what are seed treatments? Again, disease and pest protection, improved germination, and nutrient boost. And kind of from the early times, or when seed treatment started, and that was before my time, but it's always been around the disease and pests, especially the pest side, right? The insecticide portion of the seed treatment to protect that seed in the ground while it's, just started to get germinated from any seedling pests that might come along, but also just disease. And there's disease that are early on in its life, but also stuff that can help protect it further on in life. And there's some stuff coming here. And crown rot comes to mind, right? And Jake might touch on that with the 601 a little bit, but crown rot's something that everybody sees it, and when the farmer sees it, hey, it's in the fall, tipped over, whatever did, stalks are bad, right? Well, go back, it's crown rot. Well, we just seen it a few weeks ago. Well, might have just seen it, right? But it showed up right away early in the season, right? So stuff like that, what can we do, and what's coming in the industry out there that's for future use and to give us protection, season long protection on some of the stuff, or help us with some of the stuff. So improved germination. Last year, if you were on, we talked about the PMZ. We'll touch on that here again here. But just overall, anytime we have these layers of protection, we're going to have better germination. Nutrient boost, anything that we can do to put on there, either whether it's a nutrient pack itself, or again, anytime we create a bigger, stronger, faster root system, we're going to have more nutrient uptake along with water uptake, right? So again, and I probably talked about these already. I just get that going here. So again, protection, preventing seedling disease, pest infestations, germination. Again, we're going to help that seed sprout in less than ideal conditions. Again, number one, we always want to make sure that we're planting into as good of a seed bed and in conditions as we can, and looking at the calendar, looking at the weather, what's coming. But we also know on the flip side that the earlier we go, typically that stuff has been doing fairly well, and sometimes, or a lot of times, is our highest yielding, whether it's corn or soybeans. So we always want to, we're pushing the envelope sometimes, which is fine, but we want to make sure that we have the protections out there that need to. Yield potential, right? Healthier plants lead to better overcrop yield. That's just plain and simple. It doesn't matter what form of life you are, if you're a plant, or if you're a human, if you're a calf, pig, goat, I don't care what it is. The healthier you are, and the healthier you are from an early stage, the better you're going to do. And when you're better, you're going to produce more yield. Cost effective. Reduces the need for expensive pesticides and additional treatments, right? And that's not always the case, but it's to me, it's always an insurance option, right? If we can apply something, there was always the Cruiser Max and aphids, right? And I'm not going to get into that one here today, but if we can either delay some things or maybe hold them off to where they don't get to threshold, then that's a win, right? But sometimes it's just the insurance package there that we can maybe prolong it. Where, like looking at corn, guys doing 2 applications of fungicide, if we can get by to just doing 1, because we had the right right seed treatment, that's a win, right? So we're going to talk just a little bit about our corn treatment here today. If you look at the bottom there, so our package today includes the following: the PMZ, Viantis, Cruiser Max Vibrance, Acceleron 250. Acceleron 250 has on anything that's Bayer traded, so anything basically in the Partners brand bag, right, is the Acceleron. So again, just to kind of break these down, so PMZ is a dry seed nutritional. The cool thing about PMZ that when we switched, so if you were here before, remember we took out Quick Roots. If you haven't been here before, this is new to you. We used to have Quick Roots. Quick Roots was a great product. We were one of probably the first ones on it. TJ Technologies, based out of Watertown, South Dakota, when it was still around. And Glenn and Tim had a relationship there. So we got in on the ground floor along with a lot of these like PMZ, right? Through our connections and our relationships, we're able to get in on the ground floor on some of these products and again, get them to get them to our customer base before anybody else. So PMZ, dry seed nutritional, that improves early root growth and plant vigor. Key thing on that one is the vigor and just getting the seeds out of the ground, right? Viantis, and I think we'll talk about these here in a little more depth, so I won't go too much in depth here. Viantis fungicide seed treatment provides substantially better Pythium. And again, Viantis does a few other things. Thing to always remember: corn, soybeans, Pythium, right? Industry leader out there as far as Pythium protection. It's just an advancement over the older technology that was out there. Just been a stellar product for a host of fungicides, but especially Pythium. Cruisermax Vibrance on the corn. So this is a combination of a bunch of things, but insecticide, fungicide, seed treatment. Again, superior insect and disease protection to enhance that root development, and just shield developing plants against reduced emergence, right, while increasing early stand and vigor. But again, so our base treatment would be all three of these. So on anything in a Legend bag, Impact bag, the Power Plus has its own treatment on there, but anything else is going to have this base of the Viantis, PMZ, Cruisermax Vibrance. If it's a Bayer product, then it's going to have the Acceleron 250, but it'll also have the the PMZ. But we do add the Viantis to it, so we go above and beyond on that stuff. We wouldn't have to, but again, because we believe in it, we put that Viantis on there. So, and again, the PMZ, the big thing on PMZ last year when we added that in to remember is our stand count. There's some other things that it's given us some benefit on too, but the big thing is the stand count. So when we trialed this 2 years ago or 2 springs ago, we commercially applied it, put it on about 500 units. We sent it out to guys that had ordered that product or that hybrid, split their order with and without, but then we put it in plots like that too, right? And what we've seen is basically in our stand, or our final stand or out of the ground at V3, V4, we had basically 1,500 to 2,000 more plants emerged. The really neat thing though is of that stand. So if we have 34 over here and say we had 32 in the check or untreated, when we went to that 32, we also had about 1,000 to 1,500 runs. So plants that were one or more color behind in emergence. When we got to the treated check of our 34 stand, we virtually, and this was across probably about a dozen different sites, virtually had 0 runts or any plants that were one or more color behind, right? And that's where we win, right? So if we can get everything out within 24 hours of another, so one's not falling behind, that's when we win. Why do we win? Because corn is very egotistical, and it wants its only job in life is when it comes out of the ground is to outdo its neighbor, right? Outshine its neighbor and get as much sunlight capture as it can to reproduce. And allowing it to have an even stand, that's when we get consistent ears. We've all seen a lot of those kind of pictures out there. And that just was a huge benefit to that one. I know Maria, I think, sent in some stuff this fall, just had, was a testimonial basically to it of saying, that's the real deal, right? Like that made a big difference, especially out in her neighborhood. More drought, more stress tolerance, right? Or stress environments to be able to handle and get through some of that. So, soybean seed treatment products, and Jake will come in here in a little bit. So if you look down the bottom again, YP Pro, YP Basic, Rhizolic is an inoculant, Soy Effects is biological there, Saltro, and this is all coming from Syngenta Seed Care. There is a new product coming from Syngenta. We'll probably roll that out. Chad's coming in actually today. Chad Edie will be in the office a little bit later today. We'll discuss some stuff there, but then we'll get some more information from him. We'll probably have a separate rollout on this new product that's coming forward on soybean seed treatment. Can be a replacement to Saltro. We still have inventory of some Saltro in that, but just kind of going to give you a tease, kind of keep your eyes open and ears open for some new stuff that's coming that just got approved or labeled here commercially. Thing looks really good. Talking to some third-party people this fall that had it in trials that are not connected to Syngenta Seed Care said, wow, this thing was noticeable to the eye and to the row. So excited to get you that information here shortly, but just kind of giving you a teaser here today. So if we look into our packages here, so YP Pro, YP Basic, those are our private label brand names on them, powered by Cruisermax, right? So that's the key there. Cruisermax Vitamix Dynasty, top of the line product, in industry leading, right? Widely used in the industry, right? We all get that, but there's a few things that we do a little bit different here, but some other things that we can add to it or offer that others might not. But again, main thing is that when we made that switch here a year ago, is application was seamless, drying, no bridging, right? Just hands down a superior product as far as coating, drying, and user friendliness, right? So again, so Cruiser Max Vibrance and Dynasty. So again, we have the Cruiser Max Vibrance. Again, as it says there, helps reduce risk of early season insect and disease. Cruiser Max is going to be the insect portion of that. Vibrance is going to bring in that Pythium and fungicide side of it. There's the sides of soybean aphid, bean leaf beetle, and all that stuff on there as well. But again, early season Pythium, Phytophthora, Fusarium, seaborne sclerotia, seaborne phimosis, and enhanced rhizoctonia protection. I mean, right, awesome product. Hits all the key things, but there's about 4 different modes of action in there and active ingredients to give us that protection, right? Now, if we get into a situation where the producer's saying we're getting a little more cost sensitive, and the producer's saying, hey, the insect side of it just doesn't, I don't feel a need for that, haven't had an issue with that. Do you have something that maybe is a little more cost favorable, but still giving me the same kind of protection? YP Basic, right? So again, going to still have all the product in there as far as what the Pro does, just without the Cruiser Max insecticide portion of it. Awesome product there. Love that as far as just from a base treatment for a fungicide. To me, that's top of the line. Really, as you see, 1.55 ounce per 100. So I mean, usage rate is super low on it. Just a great product. Again, all usage rates are on here. And that's the key, is we looked at when we made the switch here a year ago on YP Pro and Basic, that usage rate. So if we want to add Sultra, if we want to add Soy Effects, we can still keep it at that 5 ounces or under per 100 weight, right? And that's kind of that tipping point. Sometimes if we start getting way over that, it's going to get tricky as far as just what we have to do to get that product dried and before it goes into a tender or back into a tote. So just all that stuff's on your beginning. If you need more technical information, there are sheets available on all these. Resler, 40 unit bladder on those, or 400 unit bladder. Again, to me, one of the top of the line industry leading inoculants. And I'll be the first to say, because I'm sure there's people on here, last year we had some issues, right? I talked to Chad here a week or two ago, and I know Bob Lee's talked to him. We had some stuff that was just gummy, right? Not the greatest. Talked to Chad, assured us that the product that we have this year is good. They're not sure what happened there exactly. It was a kind of a one-off deal. Never seen it before with that product. As they went through their notes and went back through their people, it's not something they saw a lot last year. So he assured me that this year the product would be good. That product, as far as efficacy, as far as an inoculant, is very good, right? The concentration of it and the survival on seed is top of the line. Days on seed that we can have if need be is one of the best in the industry. So just very good product there as far as the inoculant goes. Sultro, if SDS is an issue, which this year, was probably more prevalent in all of our area than what we have in the last few years. That's a SDS is, I always kind of put it back to, it's a 1 and 3 year deal, right? So we might not see it for 3 more years or 4 more years here, or we could, right? We just don't know. But last year, obviously, sudden death was pretty prevalent. Never got to maybe be to the level where it was just a huge yield impact, as we've seen in other areas. Usually as we get south into Iowa and into that geography, it's usually where we can see it, where when it hits in those pockets and spreads, that pocket where it started can be a 0. We didn't really see that this year. But again, Sultro is going to be, or SDS is going to be top of mind in a lot of guys' memories out there from this fall or summer through the growing season. So we want to make sure that we can bring that up and see if that, hey, if was SDS an issue, we have a product that's going to be one of the best out there. Some of the other products in the industry that are out there have some what I would call side effects, right? You know, if you're buying a pharmaceutical for yourself, all the little fine print saying this might cause, right? This is one of the as far as effectiveness, as far as on SDS, is one of the best out there, I feel, but also one of the safest of the crop. Again, there's some other products out there that just don't always have that safety side of it there. And that's why we carry this one. Again, there will be a new product coming that is broader spectrum, has SDS, has cyst, has a lot of stuff going on for it. So price point wise, Saltro, when we get into that, when we break all that out for you, when we get the slide deck on that one, Saltro will still have a play, but there will be a one kind of an easy button to hit too if a guy wants to hit broad spectrum. So SoyFX product that's been around for a while. I think we got some data coming up here in a minute too. There were some plots that did extremely well this year. Again, 1 ounce per unit on this 120-ounce jugs. Kind of a unique combination. Again, like it says here, microbial that are gonna trigger a positive response, right? As you see down below, the key benefits: yield. That's the big thing. Just yield on this, right? Going to increase total leaf, and that's what we've seen when we apply this is side by side. That leaf is usually bigger. Again, why does that matter? We're making a bigger solar panel out there, right? If we can get more sunlight into that plant for it to photosynthesize and create sugars, it's going to produce more yield. Bigger pod set, larger bean, and improved ability to withstand stress. And that's with all these, right? It's ability to withstand stress. Big thing with SoyFX, we always just kind of say is you got to have with what this product can do. It's probably going to need a little more water. So if we're going to put it into a desert, not the ideal spot for it, but also just good fertility overall already in the field, right? We don't want fertility to be our limiting factor with a product like SoyFX, but a product that if we're looking for that next level of yield on certain fields, or guys say, hey, I think I have all the things that are right in my soil to hit this next yield level. How do I get there? This is the product to help get them over that hump. Going back, talking about the SoyFX here. So again, this Cody Miller plot, Wahpeton, North Dakota there, kind of right on just north of Watertown, South Dakota there, you know, and kind of close to the border of Minnesota. Phenomenal data this year, right? So we look at our 07E, the old standby bean there. If we look here, I think the very top one is the untreated at 55.5. SoyFX on here, 69 bushel. The 1-2, the check down here, 65.3 and then 68.1. So phenomenal yield there. You know, anytime, I mean, and I'm not going to tell you you're going to get that 10 plus bushel bump every time there on SoyFX, but the potential's there, right? But if, you know, looking at the 68 to 65.3, if we can hit a 2.7, 2.6 bushel response there, that's a good day, right? So that's going to put money in the farmer's pocket, and they're going to be happy. Jake.
Perfect. All right. So I just want to go back, Resler, to that SoyFX. Yep. So click back one. So before I talk about the kind of the new buzzword, the new thing we got coming here, I really want to kind of stress that SoyFX is an offensive yield type product. Okay. So it's a whole kind of mix of bacteria that are meant to perform in offensive situations. So where we have adequate fertility, we have adequate moisture in the you know, moderate to high yield years, that's where SoyFX is giving you the best return on investment. The product I'm about to talk about is going to be more of that, like when things get tough on the disease side, you know, we're struggling with other abiotic, or well, I should say biotic stressors on the disease side, but not necessarily, you know, on the all-weather driven. So people right away are going to ask, you know, and I already know the question's coming eventually is, you know, which one do I use? Do I use SoyFX or do I use TS601? There still is a big play for SoyFX, and if the dealers, if you've been selling SoyFX or using it yourselves, still a great product to use, and still, like, it's still, you know, we talk about our life cycle on the corn side, it's at its mature phase in life. We're still selling that product and pushing it and promoting it heavily, and I still have had very good performance, especially like over where I live, getting a little bit higher yield scenarios from here and into southern Minnesota. So SoyFX has been a big play. But today we're going to talk about something new. So one caveat before I start this, I was told by our marketing department that I had to say this. This is not released yet. We do not have the EPA approval for planter box. So what I'm going to talk about today is going to be seed coat. There's going to be a call on December 15th, kind of a rollout to that. So with Allison from New Leaf Symbiotics on this product, but I just kind of want to give you guys a teaser about what this is, because if you've been to any of the plots or the trainings, I think we talked a little bit about this, maybe a kickoff with the New Leaf. They might have had some teasers, but just kind of to pre-release this. I like breaking the rules, so we're gonna release this early. But I don't have pricing, I don't have packaging, I don't have that. I'm just talking the product today, so don't ask what the price is gonna be or anything like that, because I don't have that yet. So here's what TS601 is. So this is going to be available for the Legend dealers, and it's also available through Yieldmaster Solutions. So it's a biofungicide. So this is going to be a seed coat for soybeans. There will possibly be a planter box. We're awaiting EPA approval. That's out of our control, out of New Leaf's control. When that gets released, we'll get that out to you guys. The planter box will be available for corn and soybeans. The seed coat right now is only soybeans. So I don't have a downstream seed coat for corn. So what this product does, it provides season-long protection when you apply it, either at planting through the planter box or the seed coat. So it's kind of like extending a residual. So we think about putting fungicides like over the top of corn or on soybeans, that we were just talking seed treatments. Those things, those hard chemistries have a residual. They run out of effectiveness after a certain amount of days. Might be 3 weeks, might be 4 weeks. Some of the cheaper ones might be 2 weeks. Eventually, they run out of efficacy. They don't really work anymore. So this is a little bit different, where this is with the plant from the time the seed germinates all the way until it senesces, black layers. You hit R6 on beans till that plant is done maturing in the fall. This bacteria is working and fighting with that plant. So what it does is it helps reduce the number of, call it like rescue sprays if needed. We'll talk about that here in a minute. But it just essentially, like when we get in those really tough disease environments, some of you guys on this call, if you've ever played with a fun disease called white mold, you know that there is no magic bullet to solve white mold. And it's a reduction in disease. It's not an elimination. So we can't just use 601 and expect to never see white mold show up again. It's not a silver bullet. It's a management program, or kind of a step-by-step addition into a management program for whatever disease. So if you look at the chart on the right there, so I'm going to really focus on soybeans today because that's the one we have approved right now. So it covers Pythium, which would be your damping off early in the spring, white mold on soybeans, Rhizoctonia. I've seen some really good results. It's not listed on here, but some of the data I'm going to show you guys, they haven't had enough data on it to officially register this, but I have seen it work extremely well on anthracnose on soybeans. That was a big problem in Wisconsin this year with how much water we had late. And then sudden death syndrome as well is added to that label now too. So I don't think there's any cotton or peanut guys on here, but so we won't cover those. And then on corn, the two big ones is tar spot and southern rust. There also is common rust on that label. And I do believe in the future they will get crown rot on there. Same thing, you got to have, they've got to have the observations and the proven test to add that to that label. We just don't have that yet, but that's as what's approved as of right now. So just real brief, this is kind of how it works. So if you look at the top there, it's called a induced systematic resistance. So this is how any of the Terrasym products, so whether it's the 450 for corn, the 401 for soybeans, the 201, also known now this year as the Rhizostack Repel, this is how all of those products work. So essentially when they're inoculated, if you look at the top pink line there, you put it on, you've got a lag time where it takes about 5 to 10 days for the plant to get primed, for the bacteria to get in, do what it needs to do, and get the plant ready. And then whenever you have that attack, essentially the pathogen, or there's the rootworm larva on here. This isn't a rootworm product, but let's say we're using tar spot. When tar spot hits, the plant is already ready and has everything in order of what it needs to do to fight that disease, so it's being proactive instead of reactive. So what happens in the bottom, the blue line, you don't have any priming. That period of time from the time the infection occurs to when the plant responds is longer. So the infection can overwhelm the plant then, if that makes sense. So let's talk corn quick. So like I said, we do not have a product approved for corn today. Possibly in the future. We'll know more in the coming months here. But just to kind of give you an idea, so this is from their data set. So they do their data set based on reduction in incidence rate of disease. So the mid-assay rating, or that's kind of like their mid-season rating on it. So on tar spot, they had 88% reduction. Their final rating, when all the data came back and everything, was 60. So the two little stars there, the asterisks, those mean that it was significantly different from the checks. Like there was a significant difference in the yield side. The Southern Rust, so if you look at the final rating there, so like mid-season, it hadn't showed up yet, so they really didn't have enough data. So they saw about a 56% reduction in Southern Rust. So that one wasn't, in the data sets wasn't significantly different. But this year, if you guys had Southern Rust in your area, you have customers, they know how detrimental that was to yield. A 56% reduction in that it was huge. I could have added 2-3 points in test weight pretty easy, which for a lot of guys, it made a big difference. Moving down on the soybean side there. So if you look, the big one to me with this is if you say the word TS601, the first thing in my mind as an agronomist comes to the white mold side. Just because white mold is probably the biggest yield robbing disease in soybeans that is the most widespread across the upper Midwest. So if you look there, mid-season, they had a 48% reduction in infection, 51% by the time it was all done. So if you look at that, if we can reduce the incidence rate of white mold by 50% in that field, that's drastic. If you're in a 60 bushel environment and you can continually get 30 bushel beans because of white mold pressure and you're just losing on a half yield, that could be the difference between you getting 45 bushel beans and 30 bushel beans, which that's a huge difference. So and then the other one there, Rhizoctonia, this is one that gets a lot of guys forget about Rhizoc. The vibrance part of our Cruiser Max Vibrance, that's the vibrance is going after the Rhizoctonia. That's a disease that it's kind of like a root pruner, kind of a nibbler. It kind of stays with the plant season long and continually does damage. So we saw a ballpark about a 50% reduction across the board on that disease as well. So we're talking about, the people say if I have, for instance, I didn't talk about SDS is on there at 25%, but they're like, well, I use seed treatment. I use, Resler just told us how good Cruiser Max was, and Cruiser's a great product. Don't get me wrong. But they still have holes. There's still those things run out of viability after a certain amount of time. That residual runs out. So what we have here, this is their data set. So if you look and focus on, like, for instance, like the Pythium over here on the left. So I got the two blue arrows in the key down here. So the two that I'm looking at is the inoculated control, which is the highest bar there. And so what they have is the percent incidence rate of infection. So you had 33% infection in an inoculated control. Then the dark green is just TS601, and then so that'd be essentially the inoculated, with the TS601 on it. So we saw you had essentially a 13% reduction there, or I should say count of plants. And then so if you look at standard chemistry, so people are like, oh, I'll just use, I'll use the Cruiser Max Vibrance package. I don't need to use this product. If you look at the difference between those two, the dark blue and that middle blue color, we still saw a reduction using the standard chemistries with the 601 in every single disease across the board. And that's kind of a big thing. And this is on peanuts, so this isn't soybeans. Then I'm sure they have these graphs, and Allison will talk about it. This is just the screen grab I grabbed. But the concept is that it's not a standalone. I wouldn't say this replaces all seed treatments and I'll just use TS601. But like I was saying before, it's part of that management program of using both these products in conjunction to help reduce the incidences of these diseases. Obviously, for the white mold, there isn't any seed treatments that work. Cruiser doesn't do anything for white mold, but it's kind of just a proof of concept. Okay. So the TS601, so this is kind of a neat slide. So I got to see a lot of these trials, and we'll talk about the data that we saw in the Legend stuff. A lot of these trials I walked a lot this season. This is something I saw at Baldwin. I saw it over at our plot a field we had by Alma Center. There's a noticeable difference in the incidence rate. When you walk down a row and you start looking for dead plants, and when the after leaf drop, and you're looking at plants that were infected with white mold or SDS or anything like that, and you start picking it out, this chart does a really good job. So if you look at this, so the left graph is what I'm going to look at first. So that's the incidence rate. So essentially your black line there is your percent incidence of the you're essentially inoculated, doesn't have any TS601, and then you can see your percent incidence on the left there. So if you get 30 days out, we had a big spike, and then it kind of, you see those single plants here and there infected, kind of gets a little worse as it goes on, but not nearly as bad as that first initial flush of white mold. The pink line is the inoculated trial with 601. We essentially reduced that by, I think, ballparking it here, about 40% reduction on number of plants infected in that population. What does that translate to yield? Could be 5 bushel, could be 50 bushel, depends on the tolerance level of that plant. Could be, there's a lot of factors that go into that, but just the reduction in the incidence rate alone. And then when you get out there, so if you look as you get out, when we get out, it's like I said, it's not a silver bullet. We get out to that 70, 90 days towards the end. Eventually, the white mold will probably show up in those plants. Like there is nothing on the market today. If white mold, if it goes, that spore hits that flower, goes in and starts growing that sclerotia inside the stem, there is nothing on the market today that will completely stop and kill that infection. Once that infection has taken place, your variety tolerance and other products like other fungicides can slow the spread. For instance, like the 601, it will slow and help the plant fight that off naturally, but there's nothing that will kill that and stop it 100%. So eventually, and you guys have seen this, if white mold moves in late July, it's a lot more detrimental to yield than if we see it show up September 10th in a normal year. But if we can, if you still have those plants infected, if we only lost 100 seeds per pound and the plant's mostly filled out versus we got that infection at node 1 and it killed the whole plant and there's nothing in the pods, that's the difference between losing 5 bushel and 50, just that drastic drop off. So, and then if you look at the severity on the yield side, and this is the big one, so that right graph, same concept, look at the severity difference. So we had the incidence rate at 70 days on the left graph. Yeah, eventually the white mold got to those plants, but look at the severity on the yield side. We were able to save, so it was a lot less severe infection, and we lost a lot less yield, if that makes sense. So 55% reduction in severity. To me, that's huge. So this is an inoculated trial. I believe this is they're on farm trials at 4 reps. You can kind of see the protocol there. So this is just on the white mold side. That's kind of what we're seeing with it. So this is the 601 trial. So this is a whole field trial we had down by Knapp, Wisconsin. So this plot, or it wasn't a plot, but this trial, it was we ended up treating 1 bulk bag with TS601, 1 without, split planter across. I think this trial was 60 acres, and the rest ended up on another field. But so what we did is we went in and took the customer's mapping software, I believe it was Climate, went in and pulled the data out of there. So if you look at it in 3 different spots of the field, we walked this trial about a week before combining. I did with the dealer and the customer, and it was drastic. And I have pictures on my phone that I really probably should have sent to marketing. I guess that's my bad. We'll have them for you. But you could visually, so it was all on our 16E435. For you guys that know, that's my favorite bean that we have in our lineup. But that you could visually see a color difference in the plants from anthracnose and SDS infection, where the untreated check had that chalky white twisted up top appearance to the other one, kind of a lighter color bean, which the 16Es are a dark brown, to a very stark line of, you could see the planter split. It was 8 rows and 8 rows. So it was 16 and 16 across this entire field. And we walked the whole way, counted rows across that entire field, and you'd hit row between 16 and row 1 of the untreated and treated, and you could see that line. So ballpark here. So there was we had there was almost 2 bushel, 5 bushel, and then about another 3 bushel on the other side, and that's coming across the whole field. So is in different areas. So and that's the thing with a lot of biologicals is, if you see a 10 bushel response on one side of the field, you may only see a 4 bushel in another spot just because maybe the disease wasn't as bad, maybe the fertility is better. It's going to be variable as you look across that field. But this is the data that we're talking here is like an acre and a half to 2 acres pulled on a yield map. So it's not like just a 100-foot strip trial or anything like that. So pretty reliable data. Okay, so this is just real quick, kind of a teaser on the corn. Like I said before, we do not have a corn product yet approved. Still awaiting EPA approval. But I just kind of want to show you guys the data on this. And this is same thing. Guys are going to say, well, I'll just spray a foliar fungicide at tassel timing. That'll save the day, and I'll use a good hybrid. And it's a good management program. But just like last year, so in where I live was probably the epicenter of tar spot in 2024. From Goodhue County, Minnesota, up to the western part of Wisconsin was probably the biggest yield losses in I would venture to say the Midwest. And looking, a lot of guys sprayed that fungicide, and if they sprayed a little too early or whatever, and their residual ran out, they still lost 30, 40 bushel on the guys that were making 2 applications. They were seeing a huge yield response in 24, not necessarily this last year. And the whole fungicide, that's a whole nother conversation. But the point of this is so that we have these 3 locations they tested, so A, B, and C. So if you look, so it's kind of like a low pressure environment, kind of maybe a little moderate pressure environment, and a super high pressure environment. So if you look there at the protection against tar spot. So, and I see the 2 on the left. We're going to go to location C is kind of what I want to focus on. So we had a 30% incidence rate on the leaf is kind of what they rated it as. TS601, where they had that side by side, we reduced it by about 20% there in that one trial. And Delaro Complete, yeah, did a better job, but here's the key is Delaro Complete still did not control everything. So it's kind of like if you're spraying a herbicide program, whether we're corn or beans, we don't just throw Roundup in the tank anymore. What are we putting with it? Like on corn, we're putting Callistos, we're putting the using like say a Resicor or a Acuron or something that's a premix of 3-4 herbicides. Maybe we're throwing a little stinger in there. We're mixing modes of action up to get a better control. And that's the way that we look at TS601 preventing against tar spot, especially because eventually that plant runs out. And if we're planting some of these offensive hybrids that maybe don't have a very good tar spot tolerance, the TS601 will get you through that black layer period where you have some tolerance or some essentially how do I say this? Sorry, my phone is ringing. You have some sort of tolerance level that's going to get you through the black layer. It's not 100% control, but if I can keep that plant 80% healthy and maybe let a few specks come in and not let the plant completely shut down, that might add that 3-4 pounds of test weight and save that 30 bushel that we need. So that's kind of the big one on the tar spot side. So all their data compiled, 52% reduced occurrence, and then the 67% reduced severity of infection. So it's we're not seeing as much of it, but it's when we do see it show up, we're not getting nearly as big of a yield impact as we would have without that 601 on there. Okay, so this is Southern Rust. So I'm not going to talk through the data really on this one. But if you just kind of look at the severity index, so a lot of guys, when they're like, okay, well, what do they call 50% or they kind of tar spot too? What do they call 80%? This is kind of a visual representation of what they were using for a key. There was, I don't know if you guys can see my cursor, I would say 40% of the corn in the area I cover looked like this by the end of the year, that 81 to 100%, where we had necrotic tissue, things were dying. That far right one there is what a lot of plants look like. And if it didn't look like that, it was either a number 1 or a number 2. I saw very, very few fields in the eastern part of Minnesota, western Wisconsin, well, all of Wisconsin for that matter, and northeast Iowa in my territory that did not look at least like number 1 or worse. So when you guys say like on the tar spot side, you're like, oh, what is a 67%? What's that look like? That's kind of give you a gauge of what we're looking at. So if I can go from a number 3 to a number 1, that's a good day. And that's kind of, or a number 2 to let's say a 0 or something like that. That's a really good day versus going from saving it, we spray Delaro or we spray Veltima or something to avoid a 3, but we still end up at a 2 because we run our residual, where we could have ended up at a 1 with TS601 is kind of the example. I'm not saying that's the hard science, but that's kind of the proof of concept behind that 601. Or we got guys out there are acres that we cannot get a fungicide on, whether they spray their own acres or the custom app guys can't get there, or they have too rough of fields with too many trees and fence lines and small fields. This is an option to go to the farm gate with that's going to work for them eventually when we do have it on the corn side. So I guess that's all I had on the 601. Like I said, we only have the seed coat approved for soybeans. We do not have the pricing or the rollout. That will be coming December 15th. Keep your eye on your texts, your emails. That information will come to you the same way you got the information for this call. So don't ask anybody for pricing. We do not have it yet. Just keep an eye on that, and then there will be a more in-depth call with Allison from New Leaf Symbiotics. She'll have a kind of a webinar or a podcast with Chris Graff on that product to dive way deeper in than I just did on the chemistry side. So
again, I appreciate everybody's time this morning. Be safe out on the roads. Obviously, we're going to have an early winter here this year with the snowfall across majority of our area. So it's going to be a little chillier here coming up in the week too. So it's going to be a good old fashioned winter the way it looks. But be safe on the roads. Again, we'll talk to you again next time, and we look forward to seeing you on the next Tech Talk. Thanks, everyone.